He said it while we were still standing in the entryway, my suitcase not yet set down. Tonight, we've got some of Reed's partners coming. Old firm crowd. My daughter was already turning toward the kitchen, adjusting a dish towel on the counter. Just, if anyone asks where you're from, keep it simple. Say you're a family friend visiting. It's easier than explaining everything. I had been on 2 planes and a shuttle from the Scottsdale airport. My hip ached from the middle seat. I'd brought a tin of the lemon cookies I'd been making since she was in elementary school, the ones she used to eat 3 of before I could get them on the plate. I was standing in the entryway of a house I had never been invited to before, in a neighborhood I had never seen, and my daughter was telling me, before I had even taken off my shoes, who I was allowed to be. "I'm your mother," I said. She finally looked at me. "Mom, it's one evening. Reed's clients are very particular about. It's just easier." I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, "All right," and picked up my suitcase and followed her husband down the wide tile hallway to the guest room. It was beautiful. Of course it was. High ceilings, crisp white bedding, a little cedar-scented closet. On the dresser sat a card with the Wi-Fi password printed in a font I associated with hotel lobbies, and beside it a small tray with 2 bottles of sparkling water and a bowl of pistachios. Everything curated, everything considered. There was just no room for me in any of the consideration. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. Outside the window, a neighbor was moving a sprinkler across a yard so green, it looked like a postcard of itself. This was Saguaro Crest. My daughter had been sending me photos of this zip code for 3 years before they finally made it work. I had helped make it work. $195,000, wired on a Tuesday in September 2 years ago. The life insurance from my husband's passing and 32 years of teaching 3rd grade and 2 decades of not buying things we didn't need. It had added up. I'd called my attorney and had her draw up a simple promissory note, 0 interest, repayment due 5 years from closing, and signed it and sent my daughter the original and thought, I'm building something for the next generation. That was how I understood it. My name was still on the deed. First position, my son-in-law's name below mine. I opened my suitcase and began unpacking. I hung my navy dress. I placed my reading glasses on the nightstand. I told myself it was one evening, and I was 63 years old, and I had outlasted harder things than a cocktail party. The house filled up around 6. His partners arrived in groups of 2, the women in linen and low heels, the men in shirts they'd probably paid too much for. They brought wine from a vineyard I'd never heard of and complimented the countertops. My daughter moved through the room like she'd been doing this for years. She probably had been in some form. She had always known how to want the right things. She got her father's social grace and my stubbornness, and together those 2 things had made her someone who could fit herself into rooms that weren't built for her. I understood that. I just hadn't known until that evening that I was the thing she was fitting herself away from. My son-in-law found me near the window with a glass of wine I'd been holding untouched for 20 minutes. "Having fun?" he asked. "It's a lovely evening," I said. He nodded, already scanning the room. "Let me introduce you around. Just as a family friend, okay? I'll handle it." I looked at him. He was smooth and handsome and confident, in the particular way of men who have always had more options than they needed. He had needed me once. He had called my daughter in a panic when the numbers didn't pencil out, when his debt-to-income was too high and the mortgage broker was asking questions. It had been a Tuesday. I had wired the money by Thursday. "Of course," I said. He introduced me to everyone as his wife's aunt from Tennessee. He said it easily, without a flinch, in the same tone he probably used to explain which wine to order. My daughter was across the room when he said it, refilling someone's glass, and I noticed that she didn't come over. She stayed busy, which was its own kind of answer. A woman in a cream blazer asked how long I'd be visiting. "Just a few days," I said. "I like to look in on places I've invested in." She raised her eyebrows pleasantly. "Oh, are you in real estate?" "Retired teacher," I said, "but I've made a few sound decisions." My son-in-law appeared at my elbow, smooth as oil on water. "She's modest," he said. "Can I get you another glass?" And he steered me toward the kitchen before I'd finished the sentence. I let him. I wasn't making a scene. I was just noticing everything, the way I'd learned to notice things in 32 years of watching small children to understand which ones needed something they didn't know how to ask for. The next morning, he left early. Golf, or golf adjacent. My daughter made green smoothies and sat across from me at the kitchen island, and for a while, neither of us said anything. Daisy was at school. The house was quiet in the way of houses that are designed to manage everything, even the silence. "I want to say something," I said. She looked up. "When did I become someone you're embarrassed by?" She set down her glass. "Mom, I'm not angry," I said. "I've been sitting with this since yesterday, and I'm not angry. I'm asking because I want to understand." She looked at the counter for a while. Then she said, "Reed's world is specific. His family has a way of, they have a standard, and he works hard to maintain it, and sometimes that means." "His family didn't pay for this house," I said. I said it quietly. I wasn't trying to wound her. But some things need to be said at full size or they disappear, and I was tired of letting true things disappear. She didn't answer. Her jaw tightened and then released, the way it had since she was 4 years old and processing something she didn't like. "I know that," she said finally. Her voice was smaller. "I know you know," I said. "I just needed us to be in the same room with it." I finished my coffee and rinsed the mug. I didn't push further. I went back to the guest room and lay down with my shoes off and stared at the ceiling and thought about my husband, who would have said all of that in the entryway the day before and saved us both the night of held breath. He never let things sit and sour. That was always the difference between us. I let things go quiet. He made them honest. I missed him in the particular way that ambushes you. Not the big grief, just the small specific absence. The way you turn to tell someone something and remember. That afternoon, Daisy came home from school in a backpack that was genuinely larger than her torso. And she ran past her mother without stopping and collided with me in the hallway, and held on for a moment longer than 7-year-olds usually hold on. And I thought, this is why I came. She talked for 40 minutes about a classroom hamster named Biscotti, who had escaped under the bookshelf twice that week and was becoming, she said, a school celebrity. She showed me her spelling test with the star sticker at the top. She asked if I'd brought her anything. I had. I always did. I'd brought her a small carved wooden wren from a shop near my house in Knoxville, the kind I used to keep on the windowsills of my classroom. She turned it over carefully. "What kind of bird?" "A wren," I said. "They're small," she said. "Yes," I said, "but they're loud when it matters." She grinned and put it in her backpack, which I understood was the highest honor. That night I couldn't sleep. The room was the right temperature and the wrong kind of quiet, and I lay there listening to the house settle and thinking about the promissory note. February 14th. My attorney had suggested Valentine's Day as a closing date as a small joke, and we had all laughed. My daughter had said she'd never forget it. I hadn't forgotten it either. 2 days into the visit, they had plans. Brunch with someone, then an event at the school, then something Reed needed at his office. My daughter apologized with the careful courtesy she reserved for inconvenient things. "Don't apologize," I said. "Go enjoy yourselves. I'll find a way to spend the morning." They left at 9:30. The gate clicked behind their car and the house went completely still, and I stood in the kitchen in the sudden quiet and felt something inside me settle like sediment in a glass. I made real coffee, ground beans, small pot, the way I'd always made it. I sat at the island and drank it and looked at the backyard where 2 fat doves were walking along the edge of the patio with the authority of landlords. After a while, I got up and walked through the rooms. Not sneaking, just moving like I had a right to be there, which I did, more right, technically, than anyone currently sleeping in the master bedroom. On the hallway wall, there were framed photographs in a careful grid. His family at their beach house. A professional shoot of the 3 of them on a patio somewhere expensive. Daisy at a birthday party. Nothing from before the wedding. Nothing from Tennessee. Nothing from the years when it was just my daughter and me eating cereal at a kitchen table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under the left leg. I stopped in front of each frame and moved on. The study had a file cabinet, unlocked. I wasn't sneaking. I was looking, calmly and with purpose, at documents that had my name on them, which gave me the right. The green folder was there behind one labeled Home Warranty. I lifted it out and opened it on the desk. The promissory note. Both signatures, the notary stamp, below it the deed, my name first, his second. I took a photo of each page, put the folder back exactly as I found it, closed the drawer. Then I called my attorney. She answered on the second ring and listened while I laid it out simply. The note, the deadline, the deed, the dinner party. What I wanted, which was not revenge and not the house, just to be undeniable. The note is enforceable as written, she said. We can send a formal demand letter ahead of the February date. Send it, I said. 30-day notice. I'm not looking to collect early, just to establish that it's real. Do you want to do anything with the deed? Not yet, I said. One thing at a time. I hung up. I made lunch from what was in the refrigerator and ate it standing at the kitchen window, watching the doves move across the patio like they'd always lived there. The last day of my visit, my daughter and I sat in the backyard while Daisy splashed in the shallow end of the pool. The evening light was doing the thing it does in Arizona in October, turning everything gold and still. I'm glad you came, my daughter said. I looked at her. She meant it. I could tell the difference after all these years. I'm glad too, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, not quite looking at me, I'm sorry about the party. I know, I said. It wasn't. She stopped. Started again. I let him lead on something I should have stepped in front of. I watched Daisy throw a pool toy and try to splash us. You have time to do things differently, I said. That's not nothing. We didn't say much after that, but it was a different kind of quiet. In the morning, I hugged Daisy 3 times and let her hold the goodbye until she was ready to let go, which took a while. My daughter walked me to the car and held on a moment too, and I patted her back like I had always patted her back, the same way since she was small. On the plane home, I looked out the window at the brown grid of the city below and thought about what it means to love someone you've watched make themselves smaller than they are. You wait, you stay honest. You don't disappear just because they've asked you to. The demand letter arrived on a Thursday. Certified mail, my attorney's letterhead. $195,000, due February 14th. Payment arrangements to be confirmed in writing within 30 days. My daughter called that evening. Her voice was careful and flat in the way that means someone has been sitting alone with something for several hours. We got a letter, she said. I know, I said. Is this about the party? It's about a lot of things, I said. The note is just the note. The terms were always the terms. She was quiet. I heard her exhale slowly. Reed thought it wasn't, he said. He thought it was more of a... It was always real, I said. I just never needed to remind anyone before. More silence. He wants to know if a payment plan is possible, she said. His attorney can talk to mine, I said. That's what they're for. A breath. Then quietly, Mom, I'm sorry, about the party and about, she stopped, about all of it. I love you, I said. I want you to know I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this so we stop pretending things aren't what they are. Okay, she said. Okay, I said. The payment plan was arranged quietly. 2 attorneys on the phone, no drama. I didn't ask for details. My daughter and I talked every Sunday after that, and we didn't mention the money because we were both capable of holding a large thing without naming it constantly. What we talked about instead was Daisy's spelling tests and a book I'd sent that she'd actually liked and whether I would come for Thanksgiving. I went for Thanksgiving. This time, my daughter met me at the airport alone. She carried my bag and walked beside me and didn't say anything careful. At the house, there was a new picture on the hallway wall, tucked at the end of the grid where there had been empty space before. The 2 of us at her college graduation, 2009. I was holding flowers and squinting into the afternoon sun, wearing the blazer I'd bought specifically for the occasion, and still couldn't believe I'd spent that much on. I didn't say anything about the picture, but I stood in front of it for a moment. My son-in-law shook my hand at the door and thanked me for coming, and was exactly as careful as a man who understood, now, what he was standing on, which was my name on a deed, which was not a small thing to stand on. Daisy had made place cards in crayon. Mine said Grandma in large green letters with a small bird drawn beside it, a wren, she told me. She had remembered. After dinner, she fell asleep on the couch with her head on my arm, and I sat there for a long time in the quiet of a house winding down for the night. Not the managed quiet of my first visit, the ordinary quiet of people who have eaten too much and put the leftovers away and are ready to stop performing for the day. I looked at my granddaughter's face in the lamplight, and I thought, this is what it was for. Not the deed, not the promissory note, not the photograph on the wall. Although I was glad it was there, the specific trust of a child who falls asleep on you in someone else's house because she doesn't think of it as someone else's house. She thinks of it as somewhere her grandmother is. Before I left, she gave me a drawing she'd made the night before. A yellow house with a large sun, 3 stick figures in the yard, one of them holding what was clearly a small bird. At the bottom, in the deliberate, careful letters of someone still learning to hold a pencil. Grandma's house, too. I kept it on my refrigerator all winter. I look at it still. And if anyone were to ask me what that visit was really about, all of it, the party and the paperwork and the long flight and the promissory note and the photograph finally on the wall, I would tell them this. I didn't fly across the country to collect a debt. I flew across the country because she was my daughter, and I hadn't been invited in 2 years, and I still brought the lemon cookies. The rest was just the truth finding its way back to the surface. Some truths are patient like that. They wait in file cabinets and deed records and the first position names on legal documents until the moment comes when they need to be seen. I had raised my daughter. I had signed my name. I had paid for the ground under her feet. I just needed her to remember it. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes the quietest woman at the table already owns the foundation, and all she has to do is stop pretending she doesn't.